and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Thank you. Looking at the agenda, are there any amendments to the proposed agenda? If not, seeing none, we'll move right along. Is there any disclosure of monetary interest? Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. I need to declare a conflict on item 8.3. I am currently managing a similar contract for services by the recommended provider.
Thank you, Councillor Dwyer. And at that time, when we get to that point in the agenda, you'll step out. Thank you. Any others? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes. We have a motion that the minutes of the February 22nd and February 28th and March 14th and March 28th committee of the whole meetings be received and filed. We have a mover for that. Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Alford. Any discussion? All in favor? And that motion's carried. Thank you. I don't think we have any directors' reports. I know CAO Morris sends his regrets for this evening, but the town is well represented by some of our staff right now. We do have a correspondence item, and that is the letter from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. And I believe that will come up a little later on in the agenda, but they have shared in their letter, they've invited, well, actually they offered to come to an upcoming COW to discuss the report. I'll just turn to my colleagues. Is that something you'd be interested in having them present on? And if so, we could, when we get to that point, we could have them come back. So Mayor Panko, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. As the town's representative on the RVCA Board of Directors, I think there'd be great merit in having Summer come and do a presentation on the great success and progress of the RVCA in 2021.
I'm seeing nodding heads. So that correspondence item and the attached annual report will come forward at a future COW, and we'll arrange an invitation for them to come and make that presentation. Thank you. And I don't believe we have any in-camera issues. So we're moving right along to 8.1. Director McMunn is going to discuss the Beckwith Street Phase 2 gateway feature, and I think we have some guests who will be joining you. Paul, you're going to introduce this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd like to introduce James Fuchs from Morrison Hirschfield, as well as Scott Mason, who's from CSW, who are the landscape architects on the Beckwith Street Phase 2 project. So they're here this evening to present some information. Some of it may seem familiar to Committee of the Whole members and Council. This was something that was looked at previously, and at the time, I believe Council just stuck a pin in it for the moment, just realizing that the focus at the time was to get Beckwith Street Phase 2 tendered, get the drawings completed, with the understanding that we would circle back around to this conversation at a later date. So that being said, here we are this evening to discuss the proposal of a gateway feature. So with that said, I'll stop talking and I'll turn it over to Scott. I believe has a presentation this evening. He will share his screen. When we're done, I'll go through my report really quick, Mr. Chair, and then we can open it up for discussions if that's okay.
Thank you. Welcome, Scott and James. Welcome back.
Thank you guys very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Good evening. So this is a follow-up to the previous presentation in discussion for the gateway. What we're going to do is we're going to summarize some of what was discussed or determined through our last discussions here regarding the gateway. And there are some added slides to facilitate some discussions for new opportunities and what the purpose of the gateway should be. And we have some additional examples that we can go through, again, to help facilitate some discussion and better understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve here.
And do you want to share your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I hit share. It was.
That's all right. There we go. There we
You
go.
guys seeing the presentation now?
Yep, thank you.
Super. So the purpose of a gateway is to identify a change in space, a threshold between at least two different districts or unique spaces within an area. And we want to express a point of arrival to a desired destination, not only to support a positive notion or sense of place of what that area is, what makes it special. This is often tied with branding. So there's graphics, there's text, there's a familiarity with other elements that a client or municipality such as yourselves may be doing. And it ties back very importantly to what is the identity of the area that we are trying to note to people. We want to support a positive notion or a sense of place. Oftentimes, a gateway is experienced as a monument. It's a physical entity that people are recognizing in space, and the scale of that monument is very important. It ties back to both vehicles that might be driving by, but also for the pedestrians that might be walking to it, around it, crossing by it. We want to make sure that there's good visibility to the gateway as well. So these slides go back to the previous presentation that we had. Two options that were tabled in terms of where this gateway may take place. So at the north edge of the downtown area on Beckwith, option one was looking at the east side of. There's a lot happening in this existing location with the current proposed design that's being constructed right now. A number of the sight lines when looking south on Beckwith are obstructed by traffic signals, or if people are stopped at the intersection, for example, when leaving this district or area, you would pass by the gateway, and it would be behind you as you've already kind of left the gateway, but then you're further leaving the space, coming northbound on Elmsley. You don't have a strong visibility of the gateway in this particular location because of trees and other monuments that are there. And then looking south on Beckwith, there's a series of traffic poles that are required at that intersection. The second option that was looked at is on the west side of Beckwith. It's a newly constructed portion of the intersection, which into the roadway more. There's a lot more visibility, there's more space there. Vehicles would be seeing it from all four sides, and people
Scott,
who are using, yes.
I just wanted to alert you, your microphone is cutting in and out on us. We're getting most of what you're saying, but so I'm not sure what happened there. But
I do apologize. I'll try and go slower and wave at me if you need me to repeat something, okay?
Okay, thank you.
At this location on the west side of Beckwith, though, it's a positive location for a gateway feature because It's very highly visible to vehicles, but it would be well experienced by pedestrians as well, who can walk to it and around it. It's a nice open space that is in the intersection with lots of visibility. We had looked at a couple of different forms that a gateway may take. One of them was a more horizontal form, being signage, artwork, something with text or integrated landscaping. The other form that it could take would be something more of a pylon, more vertical, more upright, that people may see from a longer distance and would take up a smaller footprint. We had gone through 3 potential themes that would be represented through this gateway. Which one was the heritage theme inspired by historical buildings dominantly located in downtown. The second theme looked on the railway. That was identified as not being a desired theme for this gateway. And then the third theme that was a potential one to be explored further was touching on the canal and water. For both option A as a theme, the heritage one, and option C, the canal or water, the idea would be to integrate materials indicative of those themes into the gateway. There had been public consultation, and the idea of the theme, a combination of both the heritage and a water or canal type of theme was got the most votes, and we were split on whether or not to do something horizontal or to do something vertical. And where it had been left in terms of next steps was feature or no gateway feature, location on the east or the west, horizontal, upright, or vertical. So there were still a lot of questions leaving the last time that we had spoken about the gateways. Ultimately, for us to take further direction, we need more information to be able to proceed on, in order to come up with concepts. So there needs to be a larger discussion, I feel, about these gateways so that we can hone in on some more direction. One of the additional slides that we did put together for today to help facilitate some discussions, if this is the forum to do such, looks at some other examples. These are other gateways into surrounding area, but also from up as well, states too. So a gateway feature could be the name of the district, such as the bright, colorful letters that indicate the gateway into the Glebe neighborhood here in Ottawa. Similar letters were used for Roosevelt Island in New York. It's a color that goes back to the branding and the text that was determined for that area. There's a new installation in Ottawa for the Hintonburg neighborhood, where the letters are strewn across a plaza. Some of them are upright, some of them are leaning over, but you can interact, you can sit on them, you can stand on them, you can, lots of people are taking their photos with the different letters. They're very large, they're at a pedestrian scale. And then there's other artwork that could be used, such as the example in the middle here. There's no text on that one at all, but it's an iconic, colorful structure. There's the Garment District in New York, which picks up off of the needle and thread and buttons, some very literal, iconic images brought into a huge scale that really tell people where they are. It's a gateway into that space. And then there's other images that are transformed into a three-dimensional icon or monument that is a little bit more subjective and fun to inform somebody of an area. So if you are still considering doing a gateway, some of the questions that we need to ask is, what is the identity of the downtown area we want to inform people of? Is it for commercial purposes? Is it for the historic nature of it? And then we have to find a form that best explains and portrays that in as simple of an icon as possible. So I'm afraid I don't have proposals for gateways. I have a lot of questions in order to get to the proposal for gateways. And that's where I would need more direction from you guys. That's it for my presentation.
Thank you, Scott. If you'll just give me my screen back. I think Director McMunn was going to speak first to this with his report. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Scott, for the rehashing the conversation, I guess, and getting this in front of committee members this evening. Hopefully, so we can get an informed decision moving forward. As Scott mentioned, there are a number of different items to discuss this evening, and I guess the main one, as I see it, would be, simply under analysis and options number one, gateway feature or no gateway feature. I guess that's kind of the looming question, and from there, if we can decide and get consensus, if you will, of a gateway feature, then we can proceed with the other items being, theme, location. Is it going to be on the west or east side? And as Scott noted, this being a gateway, if you will, to the downtown area, what is that going to look like at the end? So it was important to get this in front of committee members this evening, or now, in the spring with Beckwith Street Phase 2 having started. We know Kavanaugh's working literally as we speak out in front of Town Hall on those works. And, should this gateway feature come to fruition, and there's a need as a result of a decision for a gateway, we have an opportunity here to possibly have Kavanaugh to do some of the works. For example, should there be lighting infrastructure incorporated into the gateway, now would be a really good time to start looking at that from a design standpoint to integrate electrical into the gateway. What better time to do it than when Beckwith Street is being reconstructed? There could be some concrete works, for instance, for base material for a gateway feature. And that's primarily why we're circling back around to this this evening, to get some direction from council as to how to proceed. So that all said, the report's fairly straightforward. It basically, Scott prefaced the report really, really well. So with that, through the chair, I'd open it up to a discussion and questions. And we've got both Scott and James Fuchs here from Morrison Hirschfield to hopefully be able to answer your questions.
Thank you, Director McMunn. So I guess the first question is, do we want a gateway feature? Because the other, if we don't, then we could stop the conversation right then and there. So I guess just by a quick show of hands, are you wanting to get into the discussion? Do we want a gateway feature? Just by a show of hands. Let's see, 1, 2. Yeah, it looks like Mayor Panko, you're not on the screen, my screen, where are you? Yeah, your hand's up, okay.
Well, at least to discuss it further, I'd like to hear what other members of council have to say about the gateway feature. I'm not sure.
Okay, so but you could be talked into it, it sounds like, or talked out of it. But there was at least 4 or 5 of you that raised your hand to say, let's proceed as if we're going to have a gateway feature. Then that would lead us to a discussion of the location. And let's start there. Unless anyone, so it looks like the majority of people would like to talk about, yes, a gateway feature. So the location is next. I see Councillor Brennan and Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and as we know, there's what is a gateway feature about a block away from this proposed site, and actually it's a similar theme at the other roads leading into town, but very recently done in the last year or two, which have a canal theme. They're based on it like a lock gate. So first of all, what I don't know if this could be answered, but I want to know how much we've spent on these gateway features coming into town in the last couple of years. Do we know that?
I remember, I'm not going to answer that, Councillor Bennett, but
No.
I do remember when I think it was Ms. Miller
Yes.
gave us a report on them. There was a price, but I can't recall.
I can't either,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. But I mean, we have spent some money, and you know, the signs coming into town are very nice. There's one, and the one that I referred to is down by the Jerry Lowe Arena. So I wouldn't speculate that they weren't that cheap. So my next question is, for this particular gateway feature that we're talking about, and I know there's no cost that was in the report that I saw. I might have missed it, but I don't think I did. So what kind of dollars are we talking about to do something grand for a gateway feature?
Yes, Director McMahon.
Yeah, Councillor Brennan. That's a really good question, and it's unfortunately almost impossible to determine, even to estimate what the cost would be, not knowing exactly what we're looking at this point for a gateway feature. So I know that doesn't really afford a great answer to your question, but unless Scott has something to add to that in his experience, you know, are we looking at $10,000? Are we looking at 50,000? Are we looking at 5? I'm not quite sure. And again, it would all be determined based on what the construction of the gateway is going to look like at the end of the day.
I'm afraid I don't.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I don't have any hard and fast numbers that I can share at this time. There's still just too much unknown for me to be able to estimate something on, to be quite honest.
Through the chair, I appreciate that, but there must be some sort of ballpark. If you could equate some of the examples you've shown us. I mean, I don't want to be as grand as New York City, but you know, just, you know, how can I support something and just write a blank check and say, oh, yeah, go ahead, whatever. It's not an informed decision on my part. So, you know, is it 50, 100, 200, 10? I don't know. Like, I have no idea.
Okay, so that's an important question. I think we'd all like to know the answer to. So Councillor Brennan, is it okay if I move on for now and we can come back?
Oh, sure.
That?
Yeah.
If somebody,
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thanks. So we've got Councillor Allen and Councillor Dwyer.
Chair, I like the idea of a gateway feature, and when I was looking at the report, I like the idea of it being vertical, and I like the choice that this group has given us or recommended, the one just as you coming up the street. I prefer that than, for all the reasons that they just said. I like the idea of having something more heritage, because as soon as you stop there, you're entering the conservation district, which we're going to be spending a lot of time, you know, making sure it looks great and all the buildings are you know, getting the kinds of upgrades they need and all of that sort of thing. So something that welcomes you to that area and kind of directs you in that direction. But like Councillor Brennan, I don't want to spend a whole lot of money on it, because I think the street should speak for itself too. So if it was going to be an exorbitant amount of money to have something, I don't see that it's as important as other things. And I do like, Councillor Brennan, I do like the canal entrance ways that Director Miller created with her team. I think that's really nice. So maybe there could be something, you know, that's related to that, that would just say, welcome to the Conservation District of Town of Smith Falls or something like that. My thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. So I went back to take a look at what my commentary on this had been when we discussed it in the summer of last year. And, you know, I excuse me, I appreciate the importance of having a gateway feature, particularly downtown. But I don't think we've had enough information come back in this report to make a fully formed decision. And B, you know, my thought process at the time this was first discussed was that we should really take the opportunity to embrace some public art and work with somebody who has some real talent, hopefully within our own community, but maybe not, you know, and make it a landmark piece that really speaks about who we are as a community. And the longer I think about the purpose of that piece, the more I think that it should be located someplace that is, sorry, Charlie, someplace that is not at a very busy intersection. And so I think that was why we had debated, although certainly not conclusively, which corner of this intersection it should be on, whether or not it had a place to blend with the town square, and offer not only the functionality of a gateway sign as you drive past and it says, welcome to downtown, welcome to Smith Falls, but also create ambiance within that park. And I feel like those questions were never really answered. So I don't know that today I'm any further ahead to making a decision on this. And I think, like Councillor Brennan, I think you know, these things can have a pretty hefty price tag. And I think if we're going to spend that kind of money, we should do it with eyes open about what it looks like and where it's going to go. And I can appreciate, Scott, that you need some direction about what it's going to look like and where it's going to go before you can price it. But at the same time, I don't have any information in front of me that differs from the information that we had last summer. And thus I feel like our hands are still tied. I will also say I can appreciate Councillor Allen's standpoint about, you know, using it as a gateway to our Heritage Conservation District would be wonderful. We don't have one yet, and we don't actually even know what the boundary of that is going to be. So as much as I would love it to be the gateway to a Heritage Conservation District, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillor Alfred.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I differ slightly from my colleagues because I am in favor of a gateway feature. I've given it a fair bit of thought from last time we were there and visited up there a couple of times to see how things would work. But I do think that we should have a gateway feature to the downtown. It is particularly now with the construction being finished and that those changes are going to last for decades, that I think we should go ahead and get a gateway feature. I favor a horizontal look because the one that I think of is if it is to tie together and denote our identity, there are only two things who have lasted the whole time we've been here, and that's the river and the rails. Those two things are responsible completely for us even being here as a town. It also would tie in with, I don't consider the Welcome to Smith Falls signs as gateway features, but it would tie into the river part of that because they have the canal gates. I do think that there is to be some other, we have discussed some other identity pieces, and that would be over on Abbott and Lombard. Now, I don't think we're going to decide on that today, but all those things could be relatively tied together with the theme of the river and rails. No, of course, we don't know how much it's going to cost, but I think the questions we're being asked tonight will lead people to be able to, if we decide we want one, if we decide the theme and we decide the form, then people can come back, the people can cost that out, bring designs back to council to approve or not approve. spending money, depending on what it is that we choose as a form. So no, I'm very in favor of a gateway feature. And again, whether we get a conservation district identification, certification, whatever you call it, down the road, that's fine too. But the one thing that's constant in our town has been the two things that reason that it was founded, and both of them don't age. It's not like we change our branding on a semi-regular basis over the years to be something different and have something more modern. But the two things that never go away are those two, as I've said, both the river and rails. So those are my thoughts so far. I'm not expecting to decide what the design is, if we will proceed once we see costing for it, but I think we should go ahead and do it. And it does tie together with the elements that we've already undertaken in other parts of town, like the canal signs at our entrances.
Thank you, Councillor Alford. Mayor Panko, and then Councillor McGuire.
Actually, I believe Councillor McGuire did have his hand up before me.
Go right ahead then, Councillor McGuire. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, no, it's interesting to look back at the last meeting. For me, gateway feature, I would support one on I believe it's the west side of the streets, the library block. Is that correct?
That's the east.
East, sorry, I've got turned around here. So the east is the library block. I'd support it in that location. I wouldn't support it on the west. I think it's too far out of the way. It's going to, you're going to be twisting your head to see it. So I wouldn't support it over there. If it is going on the east side, it sounds like it's going to be hard. I agree with Councillor Allen. It could very well potentially be the entrance point of the Heritage Conservation District. But I hear Councillor Dwyer's, loud and clear that we don't have one yet. So I'd support putting in electrical there if we wanted to use it for Christmas lights for those trees or for other uses, or that would be good. I think the time to have the conversation on moving that cenotaph to a place where it's conducive to reflection and gives people a place to notice that monument and read it, because I think very few people in town have had a chance to read it. That would be good, but past that, I don't, and I don't know if there's even consensus to have a gateway feature at this point. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Mayor Panko. You're still muted there.
I'll start with a question to Director McMunn. Do we have anything in the 2022 budget for the gateway feature?
No, we don't, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. So I've had an opportunity to hear feedback from most of council, I guess with the exception of the chair. And I think Councillor Alford, you've turned me a little bit here, and I do see the merit of it. And I think my perspective would be it may be a great location for a significant piece of public art that would serve as a gateway. And we've spent a considerable amount of money and time in redeveloping our downtown. It's far enhanced from what it was a few years ago. We're doing a town square in that area. We've got an Artscape project going on Russell Street, hopefully more public art as the years go by. So really changing the entire tone and environment and the entire experience for people who will be going throughout our downtown from this intersection, of course, down to Chambers. So I do see a lot of merit in trying to segment this in many ways, and to let, especially visitors coming into our community, know time to slow down, time to be aware that you're entering a new district and you may want to stop and take a look around. So I think I've gone from probably not seeing the merit of it or not sure of the merit to recognizing that it could be very beneficial, especially when we look at the merits of public art. And those of us who've traveled different places, everywhere you go, you see some wonderful public art that is very eye-catching and very memorable. So I'm not sold on which location is better. I have hesitation on the library site simply because of it's a smaller area to I think Scott's comments. It may be more hidden by the number of poles that would be obstructing the view there. And of course, there is the cenotaph there, which would have to be dealt with as well. So the west side, I think if it was a prominent enough example of public art, could stand to serve the purpose quite well. But like has been commented on here, this is probably something that may not happen until 2023, maybe the next council. So at this stage, I'd be very supportive of saying, let's make sure we have electrical services on site, but we may not be able to get to a conclusion on that, on this in the near term.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Dwyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and forgive me because I know I've asked this question repeatedly, but my memory fails me. What is happening with the cenotaph? Because I know we just talked about this not that long ago, and it was concluded that we hadn't provided confirmed direction to staff to actually action it. I think at the last meeting we did. CAO Morris was going to go talk to the Legion. Has that actually happened at this point? And unfortunately, CAO Morris isn't here to answer that, but maybe Paul knows.
Director McMahon, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether or not the if CAO Morris has spoke to the Legion or not. But yeah, that is a decision yet that needs to be made with relocating it possibly to the town hall square works. But it definitely does dovetail into the conversation about the gateway, because you're absolutely right. Should it be on the east side, it will necessitate the cenotaph to be required to be moved. So it's both of those conversations kind of dovetail into each other. So tonight's discussion will definitely inform on the relocation of the cenotaph.
Okay, a follow-up by Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. Sorry, just make it clear. They do dovetail, but I certainly don't want to make a decision about locating the monument or gateway feature where the cenotaph is if we don't have agreement from the Ladies Auxiliary of the Legion to do so. Like I think everybody would be in agreement with that. Like, this is not an imposed decision on the Legion. I think it was intended to be collaborative. And I certainly don't want the press to capture it as a forced eviction of that site. Like, I think they do dovetail, but perhaps consultation with the Legion comes first.
Thank you. Maybe I'll jump in with my comments. I think the information we're looking for can't, or that some of us are asking for, can't be delivered until we make some decisions. And I think that's the essence of tonight. I was looking to see the merit of a gateway, and I think the previous slide by Scott helped me understand that because everybody has a gateway these days, we have to have one. That's what I was thinking. But there is actual, I'm assuming, evidence that they do promote a district. They send a message. It's good marketing. It's all about the branding. And so in that case, I'm in favor of a gateway. I think given the reasons of the sight lines, the complications of the library site, I'd prefer it on the west side. And I don't care if it's horizontal or upright. And I also, I would love to know the cost, but knowing that I know it would cost more if we decide in 2 years to do one and then put in the foundation and the lighting. I know it would be more, but it would be good information. And I think it was the mayor that said, we haven't budgeted anything this year. If we make a decision to move ahead and Director Membran comes back with a closer cost, either this council or the next council say, sorry, we just can't afford it, or scale it back. I don't know what, but we aren't making decisions. We're giving direction, and depending on the cost and the feature, I think there's another kick at this at a future meeting. As far as what it could signify, for me, we're also a town that has rejuvenated itself over and over and over again, from boom to bust to boom to bust. And I'd like to think that we're more future oriented rather than always looking back at our tired old railway. It was great in the boom days, but it runs through Smiths Falls. It's historically significant, but it's a rail yard for me. I'd like to think that there's a forward thinking, on the rise kind of community, which probably ties in with the people that talked about art and that sort of thing, because it could be future oriented, which is, I think, our town's motto is we get knocked down, we get back up, and we move forward and we look ahead. So those are my thoughts. Councillor Alfred.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Councillor McGuire had his hand up before me, but you were speaking and probably hadn't noticed.
Right. So please, Councillor McGuire.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, it sounds like there's a consensus for a gateway feature. I have real concerns with having it on the west side. I know that maybe we could have that slide up again, that in theory, the sight lines are there, but I think originally the cenotaph was put in that position because it's highly visible. I think the downside of that position for the cenotaph is that when you're driving by, you can't read the inscriptions on it. So it's hard to know what it's about. So I'm just wondering if we could see that slide again, because I think if it's off to the side, it's not going to be well noticed from Elmsley traveling towards Beckwith. You're going to have to turn your head if you're coming down Elmsley the other way. It's not going to be there. So if we could see that slide and just try to understand that better.
Scott's going to bring that out. One of the things I think when that cenotaph was put there, the trees wouldn't have been as mature, and they didn't have the poles that we're putting in right now. But I'll let Scott. So that's the east side. Scott, do you want to speak to that again about some of your concern? Because I look at that and I see the total opposite of Councillor McGuire sees. I see that as hard to see. But I'll let Scott speak to it.
Sure. It's a more constrained space. And when cars are stopping, either going westbound on Elmsley or northbound on Beckwith, they will have passed this location. And so people who are driving in those locations aren't looking at it so much as when they approach either. To put a gateway feature in this location, there would be a cost to relocating the cenotaph that is there. There will also be an impact to the existing tree that is there as well. It is a mature tree that is in good condition. While it's not the end of the world, it would have a drastic impact on the tree. Anything that we do there, it's not going to help the health of the tree, and to try and keep the tree will impact the sightlines and the experience of any monument or gateway feature that's going in this location. The other thing I want to share, if I may.
Please do.
So I realize we're on the opposite side of the road here, but in looking at Google Street View, when you're looking south on Beckwith, the view to this corner is obstructed quite a bit. Whereas the corner over here is very open. So I think there is more opportunity to see a feature at this location than on the east side. Okay. Even when approaching the intersection from here, we can do something that you would see on the right-hand side.
Okay, thank you for bringing those back up. That's insightful. Councillor McGuire, do you have anything else that you?
Yeah, no, I'd like to say what I wanted to say with the slides up, please.
Sure.
The traffic coming on Beckwith North towards downtown is mostly local traffic. It's collecting from Beckwith North, which is a one-way street onto Highway 15. The point that the traffic parked on Beckwith North heading towards Highway 15 towards Carlton Place, that it'd be past the monument, is fair, but with the new configuration of the right-hand turn lane, I'm not sure that there's, if we go to slide 2, option 2, like there's quite an angle on that when you're parked at that light there. If you're parked in traffic, I think it's going to be just as difficult there to see it. The thing that option 1 is missing in the blue arrows is the approach from if you're coming from Elmsley Street from Queen Street. It's there's quite a sight line in that grassed area that you can see in the upper right portion of the slide. So if it's a vertical 360 kind of piece of public art, there's a good sight line up there where the cursor is right now. And you're also going to see that as you approach the intersection coming from the library. So for me, that option 1 gives you that 360 Elmsley Street, both directions, Beckwith Street, fairly well from both directions. So it's just, to me, it's the best spot for this. I don't see how with this option 2 that's up here, it's out of the way, and it doesn't really give that same gateway effect that a prominent corner would give. So I'm just not convinced right now.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Alford, you had your hand up. Did you want to come back to something? And we'll ask Scott to just take that back down, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councillor McGuire on where it's going to be positioned, but for some different reasons. He is by trade an engineer and looks at things more clinically than I do. Once the town square is finished, and I think many of us have in our photograph albums, we've been in front of the sign at Edmonton or Toronto or many places. Those are photo opportunities that particularly appeal to visitors to our town. If it goes over on the west side, you have to make your way across the intersection or two to get to it to have that opportunity. Also, if it's on the west side as opposed to at the library, it is not a particularly nice surrounding. It's not set in something that I would consider the right backdrop for a gateway feature. So I do think that it should be over there. We'll have to work with the constraints that are there, of course. But if the Legion is amenable to relocating that to either the town square is one option. There are 2 other options. One down by the Memorial Community Center and one at the Cenotaph. And I think they may be amenable to it. But I feel pretty strongly that if you put it on the west side, you will have lost the effect that you're trying to go. It's not the library, our Carnegie Library, our Heritage Carnegie Library would be a much better background to any gateway feature that we choose to put there. So those are my thoughts in terms of location. I hadn't mentioned which side of the street I wanted it on, but I long ago decided that the backdrop for that any gateway feature should be our Carnegie Library.
Thank you. Mayor Panko?
Well, Mr. Chair, you have your challenges tonight trying to get us to consensus here, but I'm going to disagree on location. I support the recommendation that Scott made to have it on the west side. And I think with the enhancements made in the intersection, the enhancements made in landscaping, I appreciate it's not the backdrop of the Carnegie Library, but it still can be a very suitable backdrop. And considering there would be traffic traveling through this intersection, especially if someone is moving north-south or I guess it's hard to describe, south to north, there's always going to be vehicles traveling through the intersection. And so the gateway will always be somewhat impaired to cars sitting there if vehicles are passing through. So for that reason, I would suggest something vertical would be more prominent, would be more visible when cars are potentially obstructing the view. So overall, I'm leaning towards yes for the gateway on the west side and vertical. But my suggestion also would be we would issue an RFP for a public art installation reflecting the values of the town and the heritage of the town, and see what the most creative people out there can come up with.
Thank you. We actually reached consensus. There's a majority of us want to see a gateway feature, so that was good. we're a little divided. It's a little more heavily weighted to the west side than the east, but it's, Councillor Brennan, if we did have more information on the budget, which we would have to have before deciding, do you have a sense of whether you want it, or, and if you did, would it be east or west?
No, I don't think I think that we have a gateway at the bottom of the hill there.
Okay.
And you know, our decision tonight is a blank check, and I have no idea what from 10 to 100,000, I don't know what it is. So
Yeah.
I am not in a position to make a decision. I don't think it's needed at this point.
Okay, I understand that. I didn't see anybody writing any blank checks, so that's for sure. I think it's going to come back with a price tag before, but without this discussion, we can't get to the price tag. So, Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. Mayor Pankow actually made a suggestion that I think is a really astute suggestion to move this forward. But first of all, the location, I still think it makes more sense to cluster it over with the library. I'm with Councillor Alfred on that front. I think orphaning it out on the west side is the other side of the street is not wise. But Mayor Pankow's suggestion was that we tender an RFP to receive a conceptual plan for what this art installation and gateway feature could look like. And I think that's a great option before we ourselves decide whether or not this is going to be a vertical or horizontal feature, because I think depending on how an artist conceptualizes this work and wants to play off the variety of themes that we put in front of them, I think it makes sense to leave artistic liberties up to whoever the successful bidder is to determine those final details.
Okay, I'm assuming something like that would have to happen in order for us to design and come up with some options to consider in the future. So literally, Councillor Brennan, you could have broken a tie, but you wisely stepped back, and that's fine. So we have 3 people on the west and 3 on the east, and we do have a consensus for a gateway, and we have a consensus that that it needs further exploration, including whether it's an issuing an RFP, or I will turn to the professionals once more, James and Scott. If we had said, yes, we want a gateway and this is where we want it, and we want it, there would be some next steps in designing the darn thing, I'm sure. And what would you have proposed to us if it was a slam dunk tonight? Who designs it and who comes back with that?
Well, part of it would be to continue with identifying the process, because we do get into an artistic element that is subjective and needs to be very strong in its message as well. So there would still be a lot of work. So part of what I think we would have to do is figure out what the process is to move the decision-making forward. If you wanted to go public art, then it's my recommendation to proceed with an artist. That's the professional to deal specifically with that. If you're looking for a gateway that is integrated within a framework, that can easily fall within my realm, and I would be working closely with you guys with the decisions that we know, and even to help develop material in the decisions that we do not have consensus on, so that we can move a process forward. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you would work with us in a forum like this to try and get decisions on artistic merit?
And I would love to.
That's very, very kind of you. I sense a process that would be painful for me, but as opposed to some sort of a small work group that would work with you and come back with something to do this publicly. I'm not an artist. Councillor McGuire?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I tend to agree with you on the art choices. I was walking around this site on Friday. I've been playing around with it on Google Maps here. Since we've got a tie, my suggestion is, why don't we do what we've been talking about doing now for several months, and that's approach the Ladies Auxiliary and the Legion and see what the appetite is for the cenotaph. Maybe it's not even an option, and in that case, it goes back to the, do we want this or do we not want this, and are we okay with it in the side location? Because I don't know, I see we're in a bit of a deadlock, and as I play around with this, the site's got great visibility, but if it's a gateway feature, what's it a gateway to? And that side location to me, it may be a gateway to the Maple George Street neighborhoods. It may be a gateway to Samir Strip Mall there, but it's not a gateway to the downtown. It's off to the side. It's a drive-by. It's a place you'd put a billboard. So to me, the gateway to what we're going into is the downtown, and that corner's the library. But we need to figure out what our options are with the cenotaph before making any decision on that. So I don't know that we have that in this report tonight, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, fair enough. I would say that what we will by I'm not saying deferring the decision, because we do want to see it, and we do want to explore with the Legion the possibility of moving it. So we do, if that could happen quickly, knowing that you can add a gateway down the road at any time. It doesn't. It's just, as Director McMahon said, there's some economies of scale of doing it now. And so, but we do not need to force this on anyone. And so if we could find out from the Legion relatively soon and come back, and if that rules out one side or the other, then I'm sorry to say it will be back on our agenda in a couple of weeks. If the Legion said we need 3 months to make this decision, then I think we would just have to either decide to go on the west side and get Kavanaugh to do some work, or just mothball it till we have more information. Councillor Alford, maybe last word to you.
Well, just with regard to the economies of scale while Kavanaugh are here, I don't think that putting electrical into that site, that could be used for multiple different things, including light displays on the side of the library or anything else. So I would be in favor of utilizing the opportunity that we have to make sure there's electrical on that piece of property on the east side. Whether a gateway goes there or not, I know what the difficulties are to plug in even Christmas lights over there. So.
And so, of course, I could hear you saying that because you're a proponent of the east side. Now, someone else could argue we should also put one down on the west side just in case. So, Councillor Dwyer, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point, because it does appear that this is going to be coming back to us. My recollection from earlier discussions was that we had actually used our Bang the Table platform to canvass the community about a theme, and I believe the orientation of the monument as well. And I don't believe we ever closed the loop on what the results of that survey were. Perhaps when this comes back, which it will, we could also include that as part of the update.
Good idea. So, great discussion. Thank you. Director McMahon, here's what I've heard. There is interest from the majority of council in having a gateway feature. We are divided on which side of the street to put it. And the direction was to please reach out ASAP to the Legion to see if there's an opportunity and an openness to moving their cenotaph. I don't know that we can ask you to have Kavanaugh's start to wire either side of the street at this point. But I think we have a little window to give you that information if this comes back in the near future to us. Do you have any questions, Director McMahon, regarding that direction?
No question. I think we can act pretty quickly on conversation with the Legion. And you're right. I mean, we've got some time here. We just started within the last week or so on Beckwith down at the Russell Street end. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room time until we get up to that end, should we need electrical plumbed in. So, but that said, I've got my marching orders. We'll consult with the Legion and we'll come back to council at a future date, not too far down the line, and we'll keep the conversation going.
Yeah, and Councillor Dwyer had a good suggestion around if there was a earlier polling in your next report, if we could see that as well, or earlier consultations, if that could come back to us, that would be appreciated. And last word to Councillor Brennan, who's been fairly quiet.
Well, just one last question. If you're going to, approach Kavanaugh for plumbing and electrical, can we find out how much that costs? That would be good.
Or yeah, if we do this now, the saving, you're right. If we knew that, then we could say, well, we could do that later down the road. Okay. Yep. Thank you. Thank you all very much. We have moved that file forward, believe it or not. I'm just bringing my agenda back up. And thank you, Scott and James, for joining us. I really appreciate it. I know council does as well.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Okay, the 2022 outdoor patio season, and I think Director Costello is going to speak to this tonight.
I am, thank you. Bringing forward a report this evening on behalf of Senior Planner Grenke regarding a recommendation to Council to pass a resolution to extend the patio provisions that Council has temporarily adopted since 2020 to waive application fees, delegate authority for the execution of agreements, as well as delegating authority regarding the occupancy of on-street parking passes, with the exception of Beckwith Street, on public lands within the municipality until December 31st, 2022. I won't review the history. It is outlined in the report. Senior Planner Grenke has gone back through the notes of when the patio bylaw was adopted in 2013, as well as all the revisions and amendments that have been made through the pandemic. At this point, we're recommending that we keep all these provisions in place for the 2022 seasons, including the waiving of the fees. In the summer of 2022, planning staff will be doing a comprehensive look at our outdoor patio bylaw, at which point some of these amendments or provisions will be made permanent. So with council's concurrence, we'd like to add this as a resolution on our next council agenda.
Comments. I see Councillor McGuire. I see thumbs up, but I see Councillor McGuire with his hand up.
Thanks, Director Costello. This is great to hear that it's going to be reviewed. I'm very supportive of, I feel like this is just an extra step for business owners to do something that we want them to do, and has been a really great aspect of the last 2 years. So I hope us get rid of these rules, and this is the second last time that it comes through our committee.
I saw a lot of thumbs up. I did have a question, and you'll have to forgive me. I did read the reports yesterday, but can you remind me if the DBA and or the businesses with patios were consulted to see if they would like any further changes or improvements to this bylaw before because we're bringing up forward what we've already have, but did we go back and check to see if there's anything more we could do?
So to my knowledge, we haven't, for this report coming forward this evening, this is kind of repeating on what we've done, which had the endorsement in previous years. However, in the summer of 22, as outlined in the report, staff are going to consult with local businesses and the DBA when they do the comprehensive review. Okay.
So it's status quo from what last year, they can plan ahead their summer patios, but we could do more, and we'll know that this summer.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I'm seeing a nod from everyone to proceed. Thank you, Director Costello. I don't go away. 8.3 is the land needs study award of contract report. And if you're still filling in for Mr. Grenke, then go ahead.
I am. I'm not as eloquent as Carl would be, but I'll try. So looking for council's concurrence and approval this evening to bring forward a resolution to award the land needs study to Dillon Consulting and Metro Economics in the amount of $43,517.66. Looking to have them do this work. As council is aware, this regards both our residential and employment lands within the town, and will serve as a foundational document as we update the comprehensive review of the town's official plan. In the report, Carl outlines the recommendation, the request for proposal document, all the different things that the land needs study will look at, including an environmental scan, capacity for development, threshold for expansion of the urban service area. He's outlined that all in his report. I will draw to council's attention that Dillon Consultants, they were not the lowest bidder on this proposal. We did have a staff evaluation team who reviewed all of the proposals and unanimously agreed that Dillon Consultants provided the best bang for our buck. They provided a very good, robust public consultation process that we think is very important in this instance. Best value based on the cost and outputs based on the lowest hourly rate. And they offered a detailed comprehensive submission that demonstrated extensive relevant experience, references, and methodology. So as I stated, we all felt that Dillon Consulting would be the best for this project. So if council has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. As well, if council concurs, we could bring forward a resolution to award at our next meeting of council. And as a reminder, $90,000 has been budgeted. It was set aside in the 2022 budget for council for the official plan, as well as this land needs study. So that's will form part of the entire budget for those two projects.
Thank you, Director Costello. And I just want the public to be aware that Councillor Dwyer, as indicated, has stepped away from the meeting. She declared a conflict at the beginning. So I'll just look to my colleagues. Is there any questions before we, Mayor Panko?
Yeah, thanks. I support the recommendation. Just wondering when we would expect the report to be completed.
Oh, that is a great question, Mayor Panko. I don't know off the top of my head, but that's certainly something I can follow up with and reply to all of you in the morning.
Thank you.
I want to say fall of 2022, but don't quote me on that.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody opposed to awarding this contract? Everybody's green light, thumbs up. There's a consensus to move ahead, and Director Costello will let us know tomorrow on the timing of that report.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to, and if Councillor Dwyer, there you are, welcome back. 8.4 is the Enterprise Fleet Management Service Agreement with Director McMunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have an exciting report from my department coming forward this evening with respect to a master equity lease arrangement with Enterprise Fleet Management, Inc. Enterprise were awarded a contract, if you will, with LAS, Local Authority Services, through AMO. We know AMO does offer a number of different, services, procurement processes for municipalities to participate in to get some economies of scale. A couple of the noted projects that we participated with LAS on have been our street lighting LED conversion retrofit that we went through a year or two ago here in Smith Falls. And recently we partnered with LAS on their street scan offering that they have for a roads needs and sidewalk condition assessment here in the town of Smith Falls. That's proven to be a really, really good program in that it'll help us to inform our asset management planning going forward. So all that to say, I'm sure everybody is well familiar of LAS, and Enterprise is now partnered with LAS recently. And so basically what this means, and we are going to get to a presentation here shortly from Christopher from Enterprise. But basically what it means is we have a fleet of 21 light duty pickup trucks within the organization. Most of those vehicles are housed within Public Works and Parks and Recreation, utilities, and our fleet is aging at a rapid rate. If I'm not mistaken, in the report here, it's I think the average age is 9.4 years, if I'm not mistaken, of the fleet of 21. Our oldest vehicle is around 15 years old, and the youngest is 2. So this program would effectively, instead of outputting on an annual basis or every couple of years, outputting capital dollars to replace a certain amount of vehicles within our fleet. This program would be funded through our operating budget, similarly to what our maintenance and our fuel costs are run through operating. It would be a lease payment on behalf of the town, and it would afford us to be able to replace our vehicles quicker rather than later. It would afford us not to be able to have to put out significant capital dollars to replace our fleet. So with that, I'm going to quit talking. I don't want to steal Christopher's thunder here. I'd like to give him an opportunity to speak to the program. We started the dialogue with Enterprise a couple of months back in the fall, and myself and Malcolm and Art from Community Services, we all saw that value in the program. Hence why we're bringing this forward to committee this evening for some support. So with that, Christopher is on the line, and I'll let him do his presentation.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Welcome, Mr. Lockhart. Nice to have you.
Evening, everyone. How y'all doing?
Very good, thank you. Do you have a slide deck you want to impress us with? And if you can keep it under 10 minutes, that would be terrific.
I will definitely go as fast as I can.
Really
appreciate, can you see my screen okay?
It's perfect.
Beautiful. Well, good evening, everyone. Through Chair, Your Worship, members of council, thank you so much for having me here tonight. Paul, thank you so much for the warm introduction. I am one of our government representatives with Enterprise Fleet Management. We're actually a sister company to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which is probably what you're more familiar with. On our side of the business, like Paul mentioned, we work with organizations and entities that really at the end of the day own a fleet to help them do it for less. Very simply, just by leveraging the buying power, tools, resources, and infrastructure of the world's largest buyer and seller, which is Enterprise. Specifically to what Paul mentioned in terms of a program with LAS, we were actually awarded this contract through LAS, which is backed by AMO, to specifically work with municipalities in Ontario. We're actually seeing a large traction in the amount of municipalities working with us, just based on the sheer financial and operational savings we're able to bring to the table. Just given what we do every day for ourselves, because at the end of the day, for our rental fleet, everything impacts our own bottom line. Like Paul mentioned, over the last couple of months, myself, Paul, Malcolm, Art, we've really dug into the specifics of the town of Smiths Falls fleet and really learning everything about your fleet today. How many vehicles you have in fleet, what the average age of each vehicle is, the average mileage pattern that each specific vehicle is doing, determining your capital and operating budget from an annual basis to really understand when the town of Smiths Falls utilizes their capital budget to procure 1 or 2 vehicles a year, how much does it actually cost you to buy a truck and maintain the maintenance and fuel of these 21 vehicles on an average basis? And what we found is actually very standard in terms of what a lot of municipalities have today. You're not far off. A lot of municipalities are procuring vehicles from a tender process out of their capital budget. And for the most part, they're trying to maximize the life out of that vehicle and running vehicles a really long time, 10, 12, 14, 16 years, which can impact the operating budget on that side. And what we have found is with Enterprise's vehicles, for what we own and operate today, we use this infrastructure to help our folks. And this is really the whole premise of our program. The whole premise is to help you determine how long really, when is the right time, should you actually get out of a vehicle and how long should you hold on to it based on what it is and what it's used for. And what we have found, given the varying vehicle classes that we have within our fleet, these 3 lines and what we're trying to accomplish together is very different for a sedan versus an electric SUV versus a half-ton truck, which is, the bulk of the workforce of a government fleet, all the way up to an F550, a $20,000, $30,000 worth aftermarket on the back. And like most folks today, you go to tender, you determine, right, I need a half-ton truck, 4x4 double cab, whatever that is, whatever tender comes back in the lowest price, that's primarily the vehicle of choice that each municipality would purchase. They buy that vehicle, they drive it off a dealer's lot. And as we all know, right, a brand new vehicle, drive it off a dealer's lot, you lose, a couple grand right at the onset of buying a new vehicle. And through time, after 12, 13, 14, even 16 years after you hold on to a vehicle, it's not worth a whole lot, right? It's pretty much scrapped for the most part. That process kind of starts all over again. You go to tender, you buy a new vehicle, and it starts all over again. On the left-hand side of the graph, being in a brand new vehicle, maintenance and fuel, the operating expenses, it's the cheapest it could be, right? Fuel, it's a brand new engine. Maintenance, it's an oil change. Through time, those costs start to increase. So all we do for our own vehicles at Enterprise, and we parlay that for municipalities, is we find the point where all three of those costs intersect. And that's actually the most cost advantageous time to get out of a vehicle. And the whole concept is, I'm not here today to show you how we're going to be able to save you, $2,500 on the purchase price of a vehicle, even though we're already going to be able to do that. The best part about our program, specifically with municipalities, is traditionally you've got the best buying power possible, right? Whether it's you're buying Xerox or leasing Xerox machines or faxes or pickup trucks, you've got the best buy possible. So if you're able to buy $60,000 pickup trucks for $40,000, whatever that price is, you're already ahead of the depreciation curve. And how can you use that buying power to your advantage because you've bought that vehicle really well? And like most municipalities, they don't put on a whole lot of mileage, right? 8,500 kilometers, 12,000 kilometers. They're not like a commercial contractor spanning Ontario or Canada putting on 50, 60,000 kilometers. So you're retaining a lot of that equity. And if we look specifically for a half-ton pickup truck, if we're able to buy that vehicle really well, we don't put a lot of kilometers on that vehicle, we're after 2 or 3 years, when that $60,000 vehicle depreciates down to 38 or 39 grand, well, we bought it for 40. So after 3 years, we could technically sell that thing, in some cases after 3 years, more money than we bought it for. But even if we lost $1,000 on the used car market where we sell it for 38 or 39, that's only $1,000 worth of actual depreciation. And you get out of that thing after 3 years where you don't have a lot of operating expenses, because for the most part, it's 2 or 3 oil changes. So if you can kind of visualize what I'm saying, for a pickup truck, that circle is going to shift a little bit more to the left-hand side of the graph. We buy it really well, sell it for the same amount of money, very little depreciation and very little operating expenses as a result. So what we have found is by Enterprise doing what we do every day for ourselves, having the team in place, we do this for all of our folks, but we would help, instead of having an asset management policy that's the same across all vehicle classes, we would help you manage each vehicle class independently, regardless if it's an SUV versus a cargo van versus a pickup truck. And what we have found is just by making a couple small tweaks, it makes a really big impact long-term on the program. After spending a lot of time, especially on the financial components of the program, really learning how much does Smiths Falls spend annually in terms of your capital budget and your operating budget, we ran these 3 lines across your entire fleet and put together a 10-year analysis to show you long-term sustainably, even if we implemented this program over 5 years, not even a rip the Band-Aid off approach, slowly transition your vehicles through time. If we did a 5-year transition, and in addition to that, let's add on an additional 5 years fully implemented with Enterprise to show a full 10-year savings, the results are pretty impactful. Over 10 years, we're looking at yielding the town of Smiths Falls about $100,000 by being in brand new vehicles for the most part, not only for your general staff and employees to perform their duties, but for the general public that are seeing these vehicles drive on your local roads. We're able to not so much reactively, but shift away from holding on to vehicles 14 to 16 years old to a model where you're never going to be in a vehicle older than 5 model years in fleet. it'll range between 2 and 5, depending on what it is, what it's used for, and the type of aftermarket that you have on these vehicles. From there, on this type of model, it can actually be very granular and black and white in terms of what the actual costs are, not only in your capital budget, whether it stays in your capital budget or your operating budget. We're very flexible in how we fund this, but we know exactly how much your fleet is going to cost over time. We're able to significantly reduce your operating budget by being in more newer vehicles that cost less, because it's less maintenance for the most part. You know, it's high level preventative maintenance, it's oil changes, it's tire rotations. It's going to have less downtime because it's not, you know, the unscheduled maintenance of a more unpredictable repair that could happen in a 10 or 11-year-old vehicle. In that first year alone, we're able to generate over close to $25,000 in revenue to help fund the next round of vehicles for the 10 that we have identified. And the best part about that is, you know, with 21 vehicles in fleet, holding on to them for about 16 years, on average, the town of Smith Falls in the last 8 years has bought on average about 1.3 vehicles a year. So if you have a capital budget of, you know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, how can we use that $70,000 and spread it over more vehicles? So what we've been doing for Loyalist in North Grenville and Hawkesbury and everyone else that I mentioned on those slides that we work with, we have what's called an open-ended equity lease, which gives our end users and clients all the same benefits of ownership. So this is not like a traditional dealership lease that most people are familiar of, where you go to a dealership, you get a lease, you're allotted 15 or 20,000 kilometers a year. After that term, if you bring it back with more mileage, it's the 12 or the 13 cents per kilometer. If it comes back with damage, you know, it's more fees. There's none of that. This is your vehicle. It's literally just a way to use that $60,000, and instead of buying one vehicle with it, you can lease 8 or 9. So your capital budget stays the same, but your operating budget drastically decreases because now it's 7 or 8 more new vehicles. That's just an oil change, as towards a transmission or an engine or a water pump or whatever that looks like. So your capital budget's the same, your operating budget decreases, and it gives you the benefit of being able to operate a refreshed fleet for the same or less budget than you would continually do. Now, with this model, the best part is it still gives you all the benefits of equity and ownership. When we do sell these vehicles, you get all the equity on the back end to help fund at the right time, use that equity to use it towards the next vehicle. And instead of that being a $40,000 vehicle, if we've got $20,000 in equity, it's now a $20,000 because we've applied it to the next round. So that's where it really starts to snowball and it gets really fun, where now we don't even need a capital budget to replace vehicles. And not only that, because we have the infrastructure for ourselves, we've invested in an entire team to work with our municipal clients in Ontario, where you're going to have access to a dedicated account team. That's going to be working with Paul and your team to do all the licensing, titling, aftermarket, decals, recall management. All of that's on our dashboard to significantly help, reduce a lot of the administrative burden and procurement to help, buy and sell your vehicles. We use that infrastructure that we have to help do it more cost effectively, leveraging those economies of scale, and really provide a lot of tools, technology, reporting, and analytics to help the town of Smith Falls really be on top of your fleet. We meet with our clients 3 or 4 times annually, help make sure that your fleet is maintained in the most cost-effective manner. We're proactively managing and looking at future vehicle replacements. And another key benefit of our program is we all know the electrification of vehicles is here, right? We actually just ran a study on 93,000 vehicles that Enterprise owns and really looking at what could be transitioned to an electric vehicle today. What's the cost from an acquisition cost? What's the infrastructure cost look like? How do we know which make and model do we choose? How long do we hold on to this vehicle for? When Enterprise collects those data points, given who we are in the global automotive industry, we give that information to our clients to help them make recommendations moving forward. And these are the reasons why LAS and AMO the Association of Municipalities of Ontario have stamped our program, not only from the financial and operational benefits, but a lot of the tools and resources that you'll now have access to, kind of navigating in the automotive waters right now. And that's one of the reasons why, Paul and Art and Malcolm and I have sat down, and we're really hoping that you see the value in this program, that we're able to stamp this tonight to seek approval at the next council meeting.
Thanks.
So I hope.
Thanks very much.
I hope I'm within your 10 minutes there. I do
Pretty
apologize
darn
if I'm
close.
over,
That's
but
great.
I really appreciate your time and look forward to opening this up to any questions. I know Paul has a report that he's looking to chat through very high level.
Yeah, no, thank you. You were very succinct. I appreciate that. Director McMunn, do you have anything else to say before I open it up to my colleagues?
Just quickly, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to note that, if council recalls, we did go to public tender back in 2021 through community services to secure 3 vehicles. That was lessened down to 2. But my point there is we still have monies in the capital budget for 2022. We had carryover from 2021. The amount that we have is, just trying to find it here in my report. I believe it to be 135,000 if I'm not mistaken. So to Christopher's point, those capital dollars, if we were to pull the trigger on this program, which would be staff's recommendation, we'd be able to associate those capital dollars to our operating to facilitate the lease for the balance of 2022. And so we would be underspent in our capital, of course, but we would be overspent in our operating for this year. Of note as well, I just wanted to quickly note that Janet Kazil, our treasurer, did advise that we do have space, if you will, within our self-imposed debt limit of 2.269 million for 2022. Because this lease program through Enterprise would fall under our self-imposed debt limit, but there is adequate capacity in there to fund this program going forward. Subject to change, of course, and the CPI is increased annually, or the self-imposed debt limit is increased annually by CPI. But should something else change, if we take on other leases, of course, that will affect that self-imposed debt limit. But right now we're in a good state that way. So I'll stop talking through the chair.
Okay.
Open any questions.
Okay. I see lots of hands, and I really appreciate that last clarification from our treasurer, Kazil. I saw Councillor Alford, then Mayor Panko, then Councillor McGuire. And
thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Chris, for the presentation. And Paul, I am familiar with fleet management, having done that in my career, so I am going to support staff's recommendation. I did, though, over this 5 or 10 year horizon, the only question I had is when or if Enterprise is going to be adding electric vehicles to its fleet, because that is a concern for us in terms of our carbon footprint, and also in today's world, lessening our dependence on oil and gas is a preference right now.
That's a great question. We're actually able to fulfill and accommodate electric vehicles today. So we work with all manufacturers, all makes and models. Essentially what we would do, depending on the type of electric vehicle you're looking to procure, whether it's a sedan versus an SUV, we would really just put together a best-in-class analysis to help you determine what's the right vehicle that you should select. That's the lowest total cost to operate. But
well, obviously, we're only looking for light duty pickup trucks. So that would be the one that I wanted to know if it was or will be available. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I guess on that same subject, Chris, I mean, there are manufacturers now who will be coming out, I think all of them with electric trucks at some point in time. So you probably maybe greater insight than we would have. And I would prioritize electrifying our entire fleet really probably as soon as possible. And one of the merits of leasing, frankly, is if we're going to hold a vehicle for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, we have a much greater opportunity to convert to an all electric fleet much quicker than if we're going to own vehicles for the next what lifespan we hold them for, 10 to 15 years on average. I guess questions and maybe more to Paul. So if we've been averaging 1.3 pickups a year, assuming that's $60,000 to $70,000, $80,000 a year, I guess overall, would it be your expectation that once our entire fleet was being leased, would we still be in a similar annual cost, or would that rise? I mean, I don't know what the average lease would be based on this program.
Please.
Yeah, so Chris had previously noted that, you know, should we get into this lease arrangement with Enterprise, that, you know, in 10 years times, and some of this is speculative, let's be clear that, you know, there's no crystal ball here, but the work that Enterprise has done and some of the metrics that they have gathered and some of the information that they've gathered with the analysis of the town's fleet, they're suggesting that we would see savings based on the historical replacement of vehicles in the town of Smith Falls and the use of the vehicles and the maintenance related costs, operating costs, and fuel costs, that after 10 years, we would see savings in and around $100,000. That is based on the information that they have at hand and some of the data that they have captured. So after 10 years, should we, you know, get fully into this program, we would be in a position at that point where we would be replacing our fleet every 2 to 5 years. We would be fully within a new fleet after 10 years and likely sooner. A point that I would like to make, you know, that the $135,000 that we have in the capital budget for 2022 could definitely fund the replacement of, and Chris, maybe I'll refer to you here in a second, would afford us to replace the 10 aged vehicles that we have currently in our fleet. And then following that, it would be a couple, 2 or 3 a year until we're fully implemented and hopefully recognizing, you know, $100,000 worth of savings over a 10-year period. You know, and I wanted to note that that the interest in this program, for what it's worth, is not to necessarily have staff in brand new shiny white vehicles driving around town. That's not the motive or the where I'm coming at from this. It's to have safe, reliable vehicles, and at the end of the day, to save the town money. You know, I was surprised to hear when I came here that we have, you know, pickup trucks, frontline vehicles that are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. That's a little bit alarming to me, because what we see at that point is a significant increase in maintenance related costs. And if we're not putting money away for capital replacement, then that gets very, very trying on our operating budgets going forward. So Chris, maybe perhaps you could speak to, you know, $135,000, what would that look like for us in year 1 and year 2, and what does that get us in terms of a lease arrangement?
Yeah, so with the depreciation or the lease payments of that vehicle, if we did 10 vehicles on an annual basis, that would actually come in and around $100,000, everything all in. But when we're bringing in 10 vehicles, we're actually selling and replacing 10 of your oldest vehicles. We ran an analysis utilizing a very conservative estimate that came back. If we were to start this program today, and if we were to replace a couple of vehicles in a couple of months, or even if it took a year to get a vehicle land, worst case scenario, what would these 10 that we're looking to replace 1 year from now be worth? 1 year older, they've got an additional 10,000 kilometers. We're estimating on average, worst case scenario, about $2,400 per vehicle out of the 10 that we're looking to replace. So if we did these 10 units, we're coming in conservatively speaking, using 2023 model year estimates, about $100,000 in lease payments for these 10 units, which is going to be offset by 23,000 or 2,300 times the 10 units to get us in around the $75,000 mark, plus a little bit of impact to the operating with just some oil changes on 10 new units. That would be kind of high level what the cost would look like for out of the first year.
So about $10,000 a year. I know it would vary from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive to three-quarter ton, half ton, but I guess that's a ballpark. And then obviously the maintenance costs are a big attraction. the lack of, especially the cost of maintenance rising, especially on older vehicles, staff time even to take vehicles to the garages and get them repaired and all that downtime as well, which could be frustrating. So, I mean, I'm somewhat reluctant, but I think I recognize the merits, and I guess it's that fleet purchase which enables you to get the attractive prices. But ultimately, if we were replacing 20 vehicles today, 21 vehicles, we'd be looking at somewhere around $200,000 a year in total lease costs. A little oil changes on top of that, but that would essentially be our cost of running all these vehicles. And Paul, I don't know how that relates to our total cost of maintenance today. I mean, obviously, fuel will still be there until we go electric. But if you look at our capital costs plus our maintenance costs, maybe we're not far off on that, or maybe that's where there is such a savings of $10,000 a year over a decade.
Yeah, really
Director
what it is,
Oh.
so obviously, as you add vehicles to the program, your lease costs would obviously increase, right, by vehicle, and obviously that total annual expense. But with that being said, once we have 15 vehicles or 20 vehicles on the program, buying and selling anywhere from 2 to 5 years, at a certain point in time, we could be cycling out of 7 or 8 of these 20 vehicles, which could have $10, $12, $13,000 worth of equity. So we could be generating, even though it's 200,000, Mayor Panko, to your point, for 20 or 21 units, we could offset that cost by 13,000 times 10 units to help fund it. So as your capital or as your lease payments increase, as you add more vehicles, it's offset from the resale getting out of those vehicles at the right time. So it actually wouldn't be $200,000. It would be less than that, because we're selling vehicles with equity to help fund it, plus the offset of operating.
Thanks, Chris. Over to Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Chris. I've had great interest in your, it was included in the report, the fleet cost analysis. Is that something you've got handy I could ask some questions on?
The which document, or which, sorry?
It's the table that's got the current fleet, current cycle, current maintenance, cents per kilometer, and then it runs the 10-year analysis.
Oh, yeah. Bear with me 1 second here. Let me just pull it up. I do have that PowerPoint.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak while Chris is doing that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So are the numbers in the top grade chart coming from our current expenses, or are those estimates, or what's the background on those numbers?
So yeah, great point. So what we did here is we benchmarked how much the town of Smiths Falls is spending in your capital and your operating budget combined. So I know Paul and his team, we gathered your maintenance spend. We looked at your capital budget. We looked at how many vehicles you're procuring annually to really benchmark the yellow line, which is what the town of Smiths Falls traditionally does in an annual given year. So really, you've got 21 vehicles in your fleet. Your annual needs are about 1.3, which is your buying pattern over the last 8 years, and you own them all. The capital budget to procure these 1.3 vehicles, depending on what it is, because I know you've got one SUV, a couple half tons, 3/4 tons. On average, that capital budget's about 55.5. So that's your capital budget for what you do on average. We gathered your specific annual maintenance spend that was shot over, I think it was Bran, I forget her last name, sorry, Bran on your team. We got your maintenance information. Basically what we did is, because of what the fuel prices were at the point in time of this analysis, we just took this as a proof of time in a snapshot. And we used $1.80, given where fuel prices were at that time. It would be $1.80 for the town of Smiths Falls, $1.80 for enterprise fleet management. Wouldn't really make a difference in that analysis. So we basically used your capital budget and your maintenance budget. We did backwards math based on 10,900 kilometers a year, 20 liters per 100, 1.8 to determine $82,000 a year in backwards math fuel spend. You add up these 3 buckets, you're spending on average $174,000 a year. That's on average. If you did that plan for 10 years, that would come in at $1.74 million to do what you currently do over a 10-year time span. And then we just did a 5-year implementation. We added on 5 years on top of that. We're coming in, conservatively speaking, we're about $100,000.
Okay, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, Councillor McGuire might have even something more specific to ask, but I don't know that.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So the current maintenance is our current annual maintenance costs. per vehicle per month, that 145.33. And is that averaged over any amount of time, or is that just 2021's amount?
I forget the exact, it could have been 2 or 3 years. Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was, I think it could have been a 24-month time period. But that 145.33 is literally just a derivative of 21 units, 10,900 kilometers, and your actual spend of $36,000.
Okay, so some of those, so same as the like the estimated mileage per liter and that kind of thing. So, okay, so that's good. I guess my concern with this is that we're liquidating 21 trucks that are our assets. We're saving $100,000 by doing that liquidation, but then our average sustainable savings are only $1,481 a year, which is, to me, fairly negligible when we look at the size of the fleet program. Is that a fair take on what's being presented here?
The only, so this is a 10-year analysis, and just so everyone's aware, I'm not too sure if you are aware, this is a month-to-month program. So it's not like you're locked in for a 10-year duration. The last thing that I want to do and our company wants to do is overpromise and underdeliver on any type of result that we're looking to provide our end users. So this is a very conservative analysis. One, in terms of what our lease cost would look like, this is literally just a worst case scenario proof of concept model. We've taken 2023 estimated model year pricing because it hasn't really been released yet from the manufacturers. We haven't used any government incentives, and we haven't even increased the model year costs to show what this would actually look like once we get specific pricing. This is worst case scenario from that standpoint. And then in addition to that, from the owned, the resale, we use what's called the Canadian Black Book Wholesale Index. We actually took 80% of that information pre-COVID to really say worst case scenario, what these vehicles are worth. That $1,400, which is, I'm glad you brought that up, is literally worst case scenario, what we would be looking to accomplish. That would basically state, even if we didn't even do our job properly, we would still be saving you $1,400 a year after you're fully implemented, and still reducing the average hold from 16 years down to 2.71 on average.
Okay. Anything else, Councillor McGuire?
Yeah, thanks. I guess my comment would just be, I'm interested in trying it out for the 2 or 3 vehicles that we were going to purchase this year, but I'd like to see an analysis just based on how it played out in practice before replacing half the fleet with the leased vehicles.
Thank you. And I'll ask the other Chris if he could just take his screen down, please.
Sorry.
That's okay. Any other hands up? Councillor Brennan, please.
Yeah, thanks for this. I've been around this table for about 12 years now, and I think this is transformational. I mean, I'm so tired of listening to every budget that Public Works needs 50 grand or 100 grand for trucks every time. I think this leads us to a path forward where we have some sustainability and some knowledge of what it's going to cost. And anytime someone comes and says that we're going to save you 100 grand over 10 years, I'm all in. And as a bonus, LAS and AMO are behind you. I know you've got other municipalities. I see Kingston's on the list here, and I can't see why you're not going to get more municipalities signed on to this. So I fully support it. I think it's brilliant. I really do.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. I'm sensing a consensus that we proceed with this. My one question was, there is a challenge in getting access to new vehicles. And I know you're buying at a much different scale, but if we need a vehicle, it's there? Is that guaranteed, or how does that work?
That's a great question, and thank you for raising that. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of people are aware of what's going on in the automotive industry, right? A lot of shortages, dealer inventories at an all-time low, supply constraints as a result of the supply chips and or semiconductors, There's a couple of ways that we can procure vehicles, which may be a little bit different than a traditional dealership. One, the traditional way and the most cost-effective way is to factory order that vehicle straight from the manufacturer. We would spec that vehicle exactly what the town of Smith Falls needs, but then again, we would be subject to the lead times from the manufacturer to have these vehicles built, given some of those shortages and availability from that sense. I'm sure we all are aware of what's going on there. The second play is for more immediate needs, given who Enterprise is and the dealer relationships and the network we have for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, not only in Ontario, but Canada, North America wide, we can source immediate vehicle needs from some of our preferred dealer partners. We might not be able to, to save you the $4,500 on the front end because it's not going to be a factory order, but we can do everything in our power to utilize our local relationships to acquire that vehicle for you spec'd. And the last piece, which is the most unique, is leveraging our Enterprise Rent-A-Car daily rental brand. So we're selling a lot of, whether it's 2, 3, 6-month-old vehicles, it's got 7,000 kilometers on that. We're leveraging that infrastructure and inventory to help a lot of folks, our clients, just given the shortages that they're experiencing from a dealer lot standpoint. So there's a couple of ways that we can help you acquire units.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Director McMunn. I'm seeing a consensus around the table to proceed with staff recommendation, and we appreciate you. Welcome to Smith Falls. Come and visit us sometime, and you might see a gateway feature that you'll be impressed with. So, moving right along, we've got 8.5, our Racism and Discrimination Task Force Interim Report, and Deputy Clerk Bennett's going to just introduce us to this.
I'm pleased to present this report on behalf of the Racism and Discrimination Task Force. I have to say I'm privileged to be the staff resource on this task force. We have a great group of individuals that have worked hard to bring forward their recommendations in this report. So just to update Council, this group has been meeting since May 26, 2021. And the members have shared ideas and discussed options in order to fulfill the mandate and scope of work that's outlined in the terms of reference. They've received delegations from different groups and researched areas to bring forward the recommendations. You'll note that some of the recommendations were brought forward to Council already, such as the declaration that Councillor McKenna read at the beginning of this meeting. So some of the actions have been finalized by Council already, but there are recommendations in the report that are seeking Council approval. As well as in the report, I've detailed some of the budgetary items that we've proposed to date. You'll note that there is no funds included in the 2022 budget for the recommendations that are outlined. But I have included just some ideas in the staff report. The area of reflection after reconciliation, our thoughts are it would be around 4,000 plus future annual maintenance. And I did consult with Director Manhire on that. There are some other recommendations such as staff training, a webpage, and an allyship. There are no funds denoted or cost denoted at this point in time, as there's more research to follow in these areas. So tonight we're seeking Council's directive on this report if you're supportive of the recommendations. And as noted, Councillor McKenna and Mayor Pinko both are members of this task force and also are here to answer questions or assist me in answering questions. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? I'm not seeing. Oh, here we go. Councillor McGuire, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Mayor for serving on this committee, and thank you, Nadine, for bringing this report to us tonight. It was really great to read through it and get caught up on what you guys have been up to, and thanks to everybody that served in the committee. I support all the recommendations, especially the reflection garden area, and I hope we can find the $4,000 in this year's budget. I'm sure we can. I would like to see more money found in next year's budget, because I think when we look at the order of magnitude of things we spend money on, 4,000 isn't very significant, and I think this deserves, we talk about public art, but this is a very suitable cause and location. So look forward to seeing these things come forward, and yeah, it's great to get to this milestone.
Thank you. Councillor Alford.
I think Councillor McGuire stole all the words out of my mouth. Yes, I'm very supportive and very appreciative of I've watched some of the meetings of the really open and authentic conversations that you have surrounding these issues. So I am very supportive of moving all of these recommendations forward.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Penko, do you want to say anything?
Sure. Just to express my gratitude to everyone who volunteered to be on this task force, and the dozens of hours that they've all committed to trying to ensure that our community is as inclusive as possible, and to Councillor Alford's comments, to have those frank and open discussions and being very realistic. And it's hard to move forward at times if you're not willing to admit some of the challenges within a community from time to time. And I think recognizing that we have work to do has motivated this task force to come up with some great recommendations. I think will go a long way towards creating a much more inclusive community going forward. And not that we are of widespread issues in the community, but it's still a matter of making sure that we are as accommodating and as inclusive for everyone, and developing the kind of community we all can be proud of. So a lot of work has gone into all of this by all the members of the task force, and I'm deeply appreciative of their efforts and council support in moving this forward.
I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads on accepting the report and the recommendation. If I could just add my 2 cents worth, I've enjoyed almost all of the 3.5 years we've been on council. This particular committee, these are the most dynamic, engaged, committed people who have only one goal, and is to make Smiths Falls an even more inclusive, more welcoming, more loving community. And they put their hearts and minds into this. We had a guest speaker at the last committee meeting we had, task force meeting. She was absolutely amazing. And what struck her is the fact that this town actually even has a formal a task force like this, and that we're having these discussions. We weren't in a crisis. As the mayor said, it's genuinely a loving, caring, tolerant community. There's always racism and discrimination. We have to always fight against it. And instead of just talking about it, this town is doing something. And it isn't council doing it or the mayor doing it, it's the citizens of Smiths Falls. And I just can't, I have to say, I love all of the tasks I get to do, but this one was especially great. And to hear that people were actually, some of them were surprised that we wanted to do this in our community. So I'm on board, we're all on board. Thank you so much. And Nadine, thank you for your efforts on this committee. And I know you and I've talked about it. I think we get more out of it than we put in all the time. So is that enough direction, Deputy Clerk Bennett?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. The provincial funding transfer payment agreement. Ms. Crowder, there she is. Great. Do you want to just briefly present this report?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to committee. My first report this evening is just with regards to the provincial funding transfer agreement with the Small Business Advisory Center. The purpose of the report is to recommend to council that they pass a bylaw to authorize mayor and council to execute a contribution agreement with the provincial government that sets out the terms and conditions from the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade to provide funding to support operations of our small business center, which services Smiths Falls, Lanark County, Leeds and Grenfell. The background, we know that the Small Business Advisory Center has been around since 1988 and has been in Smiths Falls. So they're a long time running partnership with the town and our counties. The Small Business Advisory Center has been successfully operating again since 1988 and is currently co-housed in Valley Heartland, the Community Futures Development Corporation. The SBAC provides core business information, advisory, and support services to local entrepreneurs and businesses. Through their funding program, they operate Summer Company that provides hands-on business training and mentoring, in addition to awards up to $3,000 to help enterprising students between the ages of 15 and 29 start up and run their summer businesses, as well as Starter Company Plus, which is a training and coaching program that also provides funding to successful candidates. Historically, the ministry and the town of Smith Falls have had 3 different agreements for various programs offered through SBAC, and in 2019, a new agreement to combine all of these programs into one agreement to streamline the process came forward. This year, there's a new 2-year agreement, which has the option of extending to a 3rd year, which will secure funding from April 1st, 2022 until July 31st, 2024. The amount that's being offered as part of this contribution agreement is $363,332 to support the operations and functions of a small business center. So staff is recommending again that council authorize clerk and mayor to enter into this 2-year agreement to provide the SBAC with further funding. And I also just wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate Cindy James. She is the manager of our Small Business Advisory Center, and this is her 20th year in that position, and she's been an amazing resource to our business community, both locally and regionally.
Thank you, and thank you for the plug-in for her. Comments or questions? I'm seeing thumbs up all around, thumbs up, thumbs up. And I think, so we have a consensus to accept your recommendation. I would add that for those members on council that really love to see cutting of red tape, going from 3 agreements down to 1 is a good example of how we can find efficiencies. So thank you for that. The next one now is the federal funding agreement. Would you speak to that, please?
I sure can. So this is a federal grant that is being awarded to Heritage House Museum for marketing strategy in the amount of $65,323. The purpose of the grant is to fund marketing and branding initiative that will help rebrand and reposition the Heritage House Museum as a key cultural and heritage asset to the town, which we know that it is. There's not much to say. It hasn't been officially announced, so I can't allude to who the funding source is. But again, it will provide 100% funding in order to rebrand the museum and to establish a marketing strategy. And again, taking the opportunity to congratulate Lisa and Danielle, their outstanding staff at the museum, and they work really hard to leverage provincial and federal dollars on an annual basis to help offset the cost of programming at the museum.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, this is exciting, and congratulations to Lisa. I mean, she's so great, and when I see rebranding to, to reposition the museum to make sure it's at the forefront in town. The events there are amazing. We need more people there, and I'm really happy to support this. I'm really excited to see this go through.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Lots of thumbs up again. You've reached a consensus. I did have one question, Ms. Crowder. I understand that the Railway Museum is doing a strategic plan, looking ahead on what their future looks like. And now we have the Heritage House doing the same. Is there an opportunity? I'm not suggesting we use the money to be spent on the other museum, but we have these 2. It would be difficult to market and discuss one and their future without linking it to the other. So I just want to know that there will be some links and some dialogue between the 2 museums, because if we're going to promote, there's opportunity to promote them both at the same time, is what I'm saying. And I don't know.
We're actually, we're looking at doing that from a staff level and from a community level as a whole. So not just the coordination between Heritage House and Remo, but also our other event organizers and other assets within the town of Smith Falls from a tourism perspective. We're looking at setting up another tourism group so we can come together on a quarterly basis to talk about all things events related and tourism related and cultural related within the town of Smith Falls to help really coordinate those efforts. And again, that's going to be part of our overall marketing plan when our new communications persons start to really help coordinate the marketing of those assets to the community and to visitors.
So if I understand the strategic plan for the Railway Museum and the work that the Heritage House Museum is undertaking with this grant will be harmonized with other things as well. The big picture is going to be looked at.
Absolutely. And
great.
The Heritage House Museum is also going through a strategic planning exercise themselves. So not only this branding and marketing plan, but also a full-on strategic overview. And there'll be public consultation for that as well as conversations with the other assets. So lots of talking happening and coordination happening.
Thank you, and please extend our gratitude to on both of those funding endeavors. It looks like you're still going here on the other federal funding agreement, Artscape Parquet, which looked wonderful. Can you speak to that, please?
I can. So this is actually a provincial funding agreement for the Artscape project. And the recommendation is that Council of Corporation endorse the project as a whole, as well as pass a bylaw for mayor and council to execute the agreement, as well as an MOU with the private land owner in order to execute a mural on their building. So 3 asks in this report. So in an effort to increase and support arts and cultural offerings within the town of Smith Falls, previous staff actually had endeavored to identify a number of locations for public art installations, including murals, and this location had been one of them. There was grant funding that came available this year, and the town, in partnership with the Downtown Smith Falls Business Association and in support from the Chamber of Commerce, decided to put through a grant application to not only put in a mural, but also to reimagine a blank canvas that's underutilized and being municipal property into a parquet. And so we successfully received that grant application to fund 100% of this project, which is really exciting. And that's been costed at $98,750. Staff is working with Public Works and Parks as well in order to look at cost savings and way to streamline and ensure that some of the elements for the parquet are consistent with the downtown reconstruction of Beckwith Street as well as Town Square, which is coming along. We want to look to continue to use benches and other hardscapes materials and design that's already included to give a consistent look for that. There will be some public consultation as part of this project in terms of the mural design. We'd like to go out to RFP to find a mural artist that's capable of doing the scale of this mural and then providing the community with some of those designs to help pick a final rendering to be included. This project also hits a number of our strategic plan priorities, as well as things coming out in the cultural plan and active transportation plan. As noted in the report and some of the detailed pages that I included, we're hoping to include bike racks and a bike repair station to help improve assets for active transportation.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Alford?
I have absolutely no questions, but as excited as Councillor Brennan is about a grant for Heritage House, so is the Downtown Business Association excited about this wonderful addition to, as Julia says, it was pretty much of a dead space there, a very unattractive and unwelcoming spot. So certainly the downtown core itself will be made better with this project. I'm not sure after that is accomplished Beckwith Street's accomplished. The town square is accomplished. I'm not sure we'll have anything left to do much, and we'll have to move on to greener, find more projects, because the downtown's going to be outstanding.
Thank you. I've got Councillor McGuire and then Mayor Panko.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Julia. This is really exciting and awesome, and that corner's been like that for too long. I have one question on the sidewalk's pretty beat up on that section of street, and if we're digging up the asphalt behind it, I'm wondering, would there be any economies of scale of putting a new curb in and extending the pavers all the way down for the length of the park, or what's being considered there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the sidewalk reconstruction hadn't been part of the grant ask. I'm sure there's opportunity to go to Kavanaugh or other contractors that are working on Beckwith Street and Town Square in order to do that, if that's council's decision. Trying to cost that out and trying to fit it within construction timelines may be difficult, but if that's council's desire, we can go back as staff and try and cost that out and see if it can be worked into the plan.
Great. I'd love to see a price on that. It's so beaten up. It'd be a shame to have this nice, beautiful space behind it. I'm wondering with the roof drain on the shoppers that comes out, how that's going to be accounted for, and if there's any consideration or ability to include LEDs in the site when it's rehabilitated.
And so that's something that staff considered when we were looking at the placement of the mural and some of the other features. And there is that downspout that comes off. So the mural will be offset from that downspout, and the design includes some plantings along the bottom of the mural, and so that downspout will actually feed those plantings. We're also looking at lighting as well, so LED lighting and twinkle lights within the parquet to illuminate it at night, as well as for safety as well. So we're looking at options right now of what we can do and how much those are going to cost.
That's great. It'd be really good to have electrical in there, I think. It says in the report that there'll be wood planters, but then the mock-up at the end shows these nice metal wood ones. I really like the mock-up at the end of the design. Which, how do you picture that? Is the mock-up what we're going to get, or is it going to be something wooden?
So that was something we produced high level in order to apply for the grant. So wood planters are part of the final design, and what we had done through consultation with Public Works and downtown is to try and include the assets that we already have that have already been vetted through council and the public. So what we are envisioning is wood planters and having our downtown benches pushed up to the planters to provide that seating. So it would look fairly integrated, but we're also still, again, using the same materials and having a consistent look with some of the other elements that are already in our downtown core. There is opportunity to change that design somewhat if council and the community see fit, but from a sourcing perspective, we already know the vendors, we already know the cost of those benches and some of those elements, and trying to keep it consistent, I think, will help with the overall look in the downtown.
Great, that's exciting to hear. I think my preference would definitely be I like that metal, the black metal look. It matches the fixtures on the street. It matches the furniture. I can't quite picture the wood, but that's me. For the mural, how big is this going to be? Is it taking up the whole wall, or is it a smaller, like in the mock-up, or what can we expect there?
It's a significant portion of the wall, actually. There's about, I'm not great with dimensions, but where the door is on the side of the building, the mural is going to start probably 10 feet off that and then go all the way over to where that drain spout is. So I think it's 25 to 30 meters wide, and then I think 15 meters high. So it's a very large, significant art installation. We costed it out about $50,000 based on some of the estimates we've got from the arts community and square footage costs for murals. And the intent is that it's going to be bright and colorful, and that's why the rest of the applications and features within the parquet are fairly neutral, so that will really pop.
Bigger the better from my perspective. If it could go wall to wall, let's do it. Last thing, shade. Are there going to be trees, awnings, anything for shade in this area?
So the design will include 4 larger trees that will flank each side of the parkette. And again, those will be taller in height to provide a little bit of shade, but not necessarily block the view of the mural. So any of the lower plantings in the planter boxes will be boxwoods or grasses and those types of things that are fairly low, not to impede the view of the mural from Russell Street. But yes, there will be those taller trees, deciduous trees that are leafy that we can put lights in and stuff in and provide some shade.
Excellent. It's clear this has been really well thought out. I appreciate all your help tonight. Great work, Julia.
Before I move to Mayor Panko, Councillor McGuire had a suggestion, but I would like to see if there's consensus on council and that his question regarding, what was it? The one
sidewalk.
The sidewalk. Does council want to ask staff to go and price that and come back? Yes, they do. Okay, so Councillor Alford, did you want to speak to that before I declare that?
I did, thank you, because I think what council is being asked for tonight is approval to sign the, I don't think the design is all final, I don't think, and I'm not sure, as Julia said, that when we applied for that grant that we included sidewalk stuff. So the discussion is going a little off of what staff was asking us for, which is to execute an MOU for the funding itself. And I think Julia has said later on, and as she was speaking, that there will be some more consultation surrounding the finishes and all of that stuff. Now, in terms of, are we prepared tonight to give direction to cost out sidewalk repair or sidewalk replacement? I think I would time that out and let's see what Julia and Paul think could be worked into it. It was not, as Julia said, the mural itself could be 50 grand.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think council understood that as well. I think Councillor McGuire just said that this is all great. I wonder if staff could, while this was going on, find out what it would cost the town to build a new sidewalk there. I think that's all, but I didn't want Councillor McGuire to be disappointed when staff didn't come back with that information because he asked for it. I wanted to know if my colleagues would like staff, knowing that it's not in this budget. Sorry, that's what I was asking. And I saw people nodding, yeah, why not find out what it would cost while they were at it to put in a
it couldn't hurt, but what staff's asking us for tonight is something.
I understand, but a council wanted to know this, so, and council does want to know this, so that is the direction. So, moving right along to Mayor Panko, and then
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I just want, I love it. I fully support the recommendation, and I also am interested in us costing out either replacement of the sidewalk or an extension of the parkette materials to the curbside. And I'm sure that's something that can be brought back in the near future. Only I guess 2 questions. One, Julia, when I see you expect to go out with an RFP for the design and the work. When do you expect this to be completed? And then second question to Director McMunn, just regarding winter maintenance. And does this create many challenges? Will these fixtures be in place year round and available year round, or will be a plan to move them out in the winter?
I can go first.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we had originally estimated or proposed through the grant application to have this finished in July and August. But with the reconstruction of Beckwith Street and with the town square project going on, and hopefully the coordination of purchasing materials and labor in order to do the project, we're looking at pushing that back to September, October, which we would be able to do as part of the grant application, as it's fairly flexible. And we hope to also use it as a catalyst for a public arts plan. I know council really wants a public arts plan moving forward, and that's something that staff is working on this year coming out of the cultural plan. And so this would be a really great example to show the community of what a public arts plan can produce moving forward. So we're now aiming for September, potentially October, and to also unveil this new parquet and mural installation as part of the bigger Beckwith Street reconstruction completion.
Director McMunn, did you want to comment on winter maintenance?
Yeah, so with Julia's plan, the with the benches that are similar to what we have down through the DDA, the street furniture, the bike racks, the bike repair station, all of those elements that are being incorporated in the park will be effectively removable for the purposes of winter control. Should we decide that, we want to remove benches, we want to remove the planters, we can do so. Nothing will be affixed. Some of the benches will be bolted into the concrete, but they can be those bolts can be removed and taken away. So we had kind of thought pretty good about that with Public Works and Operations, with some of the challenges we have on Beckwith Street down through phase 1 with winter control operations. We did have a couple of benches. The legs got damaged this past winter. So repair or replacement pieces are on order for those benches. So we've learned from those challenges, and specifically with this parquet at the side of Shoppers, we're looking at doing it in such a way that those elements can be removed and stored at the yard for the winter, then brought back out in the spring. So.
Okay.
Thanks to both of you. Outstanding.
Yeah. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. I sit on the the Arts and Culture Council board, the municipal one that's been running for a number of years. And we've talked many, many times at our meetings about how we could address the murals that are aging and fading, and how we would perhaps enhance those or make others. So my question for Julia right now is, we're going to work with the owners of the buildings or the sites you've chosen. And then are you picturing that there'll be 4 artists that will put forward a proposal? A number of them at 4 will be chosen, or are we just looking at one at a time? How is that going to work?
Ms.
Thank you,
Crowder?
Mr. Chair. So this is site specific. So within the downtown design guidelines that were produced through the RED grant, there was the consultation for murals that was done as part of that program, and they did identify 4 different sites within the downtown. So this is just the first one that we're looking at. We'd go to RFP for this mural specifically, and we could get 1 proposal, we could get 10 proposals. So we really don't know until we go out to RFP to see what the artist community is going to come back with in terms of, again, timelines as well, how long it will take them to build this, how long it will, or what the cost would be in order to do a mural of this size. So until we actually get something from the arts community through that process, we won't really know how many submissions we'll get. Does that answer your question? But the intention is, in the future, once the public arts plan is produced, that these other locations that were identified in the downtown, we would then go back out to those property owners to look at doing installations in future years.
One last quick question.
Please go ahead.
When you're looking at the entries, the people who are putting these forward, are they being told, they're giving this information that these are the kinds of things we're looking for, or are they going to come back with an idea so you'll have a number of things to evaluate or pick from? Like, what's the criteria? How are you picking which one ends up there?
And there'll be an evaluation criteria as part of the RFP, and there'll be a group that helps vet those initial submissions, as well as going out to public consultation. So we'll give them some guidelines, we'll give them history of the town of Smith Falls, work with Heritage House and our other cultural communities and the Arts and Cultural Council to help build that RFP. To give some guidelines, but we know that the artist community likes to give representations of the the information that we provide them. And so it's best not to give them a picture and say, here, do this for us. It's best to give them some ideas and to give them the understanding of elements that are important to our town in order for them to come up with a concept for us. And then those concepts will then be presented to the community for public feedback, and then ultimately to council for final approval on the final design.
Thank you.
Any other comments? It looks like people are very supportive of this. I did have one question, and picking up on your last comment regarding not limiting the artists by, putting them into a box and saying, here's what we want. We have been referring to this as a mural, and my modest research into murals and public art, I have learned that what other communities who have been leading this, they've not painted right on the building. They've affixed the mural to the siding. So in the future, you can remove it and repair it, or do it over again and put it back up. And the other thing is, by referring to it as a mural, this is of such a scale that 2 or 3 murals, like a mosaic, is also, I would hate to limit it to say, we want one giant 100 by 50 mural, as opposed to the artist might say, I have the early days, the middle days, and the future in 3 different murals. So I would like to leave it as open as possible and not limit it to say, one landscape painted on the cement blocks. So that's just my 2 cents worth. But I love it. It looks fantastic. I congratulate. I understand there was quite a large group behind getting this off the ground, and I want to thank each and every one of them, and you for bringing it forward tonight.
Thank you, and thanks again to Nora at the DBA, because she did significant work on the application itself and drafting that. So she was definitely a help in getting this through.
That's great. Our last is 8.9, Remembrance Day commemorative banners, and it's the Crowder night. I guess we got you again.
When I come full force.
That's right.
So this is just in follow-up to a request that was made by the Legion last year. The Legion came to council asking for permission and approval in order to put up Remembrance Day banners to honor our veterans. And so it was brought back to council again this year, and staff had consultations with the DBA as well as the Legion to figure out if this was a possibility, especially with Beckwith Street reconstruction happening. And so the report basically lays out a recommendation that council support the request from the Legion. We've consulted with Public Works in terms of the cost to put the banners up, as well as the DBA, because the banners in the downtown have been reserved through an MOU for their use, and the DBA was in support of putting the banners up between August 1st and November 16th. The cost of which to do that is approximately $750. And we can do that through the MOU that is part of the DBA, and we can help coordinate taking down the DBA's banners, putting up the Legion banners, and then taking the Legion banners down and putting back up the DBA banners within that time frame. Currently, there's 18 banners within the reconstructed part of Beckwith Street, and then there'll be an additional 18 banners once the reconstruction is completed. And the installation of these new Legion banners would hopefully be done after the Beckwith Street project is completed. Although with construction, you never know. Sometimes the timelines go further than expected, but we're anticipating that everything will be complete. And this will be a great new installation in the downtown once that's done.
Okay, I've got Councillor McGuire, then Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Julia. You're 4 for 4 tonight. My question was, I love the DBA banners that have gone up, and there's a great set of fall banners. I was wondering if the Legion is amenable to it. Maybe we could push the installation date to after Thanksgiving Monday. And then that kind of gives your Labor Day to Thanksgiving fall shopping season with those DBA banners up. And then there's this good solid month. I think the first letter we got from the Legion was for a month of having the remembrance banners up. You know, from after Thanksgiving until the 16th or whatever date the DBA is appointed. I don't know if that's my suggestion.
Okay, that's a suggestion. I think, all right, we'll just leave it at that for right now. Thank you. Councillor Brennan, or sorry, I had Councillor Allen, then Councillor Brennan, and then Councillor Alpha.
Thank you, Chair. The town of Smith, or the town of Perth has done this in their downtown, and each banner they have up highlights one veteran. Did the Legion have any idea or give us an indication of how they vision their banners are going to be? Are they going to be about a particular veteran, a particular time of war, or what's going to be on them?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the Legion is kind of looking to replicate what's happening in Perth and Carleton Place. The design of the banners won't be exactly the same, but yes, they're looking at veteran families to sponsor a banner, and it will highlight a very specific veteran that's local to Smith Falls.
Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you. I'm supportive of this. I'll just, not to muddle the waters, I'll just remind my colleagues that in June of last year, the Rotary Club came and put a proposal in and for some tulips, which have been planted. I'm happy to report in the fall. So hopefully they'll be coming up soon. But just a couple of banners for the Rotary Club's going to be 100 years old, and in front of at the corner of Main and Beckwith, where Eileen Crosby had her business. So hopefully we can facilitate that some way, whether they be on a pole or one of those ground banners, something like that. But just putting that out there. We talked about it in June, and I thought you guys supported it. So.
Yeah, I know it was that request came forward. I don't think we had a discussion on it, but we should bring that back soon if
we did have a discussion.
Yeah. I wouldn't say there was no, anyways, we are all congratulated the Rotary on their 100 years, and there was lots of discussion. I don't think there was a decision by council to go ahead with the banners, but we should have that discussion very soon if we want to include that. But my memory might be off. Councillor Brennan's probably, he's a lot younger than me, he could remember it better. Councillor Alfred.
Mostly from the DBA's board's perspective, I think the letter was clear in terms of the dates that they felt they could give up. As Councillor McGuire said, the fall banners that were purchased at some cost and the summer winter banners that were redone have been planned for some time. So we felt that the dates that we could accommodate without too much trial, wanting to support the Legion, but wanting a place for the current banners to go to. So I have no idea what kind of response the Legion may have or how many they may be able to, because they're being funded by the families of the veterans. So we're kind of just waiting to see how it works out. But our plan was to put the fall banners on the side streets and let the Legion have Beckwith for that period of time between October 1 and November 16th. And that's what we felt how we could support them and not take away from the money we've already spent on banners. So,
Ms. Crowder, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I had a follow up with Ken, the Legion president, just in terms of any response from any of the members that he's had or any community members looking to potentially sponsor a banner. And he feels there's significant interest. I did let him know that we do only have 36 banners. He was anticipating more than that. But we'll see how many actually come out. And once council provides approval, if council provides approval, then we can go back to him and let him know that he has the go ahead to really start campaigning in order to secure the number of banners. So, and really they'll sponsor the banner and it'll be at the cost of the family. So there isn't any additional cost for the town in terms of the design or the creation of the banners themselves.
I'm seeing a lot of support for and thanking all the partners to work together on this. It's an important initiative, and please send it forward with our blessing. So the last item is a motion to adjourn. Councillor Brennan, now you're going to want me to read it. I have to get it back up. Anyways, we adjourn this meeting at 7:30 and stand adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Dwyer. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. You've been wonderful.
Good night, everyone.
Right.